We begin here with this breaking news, another immigration raid at a Home Depot.
And Border Czar Tom Homan today said federal authorities will ramp up raids across the country.
At sunrise in Los Angeles, the Westlake Home Depot looked like any other morning gathering spot. Workers stood waiting, trucks pulled in, and another day began. Then, without warning, unmarked vans stopped abruptly. Federal agents stepped out with precision, and the scene shifted instantly from routine to enforcement. This was not random disruption. It was an ICE raid, carefully planned, executed with speed, and part of a wider national strategy to target fugitives and criminals violating U.S. law. What happens when immigration enforcement moves directly into the everyday spaces of America's largest cities? Hi, before we continue, your one click on the subscribe button fuels all the effort behind this and every future video. The raid at the Westlake Home Depot became one of the most widely discussed immigration enforcement actions in Los Angeles this year. While images of people scattering across a parking lot captured attention, the operation itself followed a familiar framework: intelligence gathering, surveillance, planning, and execution. For weeks before the raid, ICE monitored the site, documenting individuals with outstanding deportation orders and reviewing records of those with criminal histories. Day labor gathering spots have long been areas of interest for enforcement teams, not because everyone present is violating the law, but because such spaces often draw individuals who are already in the agency's system. When agents moved in, they used unmarked vans, rapid deployment, and tactical crowd control measures to prevent suspects from escaping. To onlookers, the deployment of gas canisters and agents spreading quickly across the parking lot seemed chaotic. In reality, it was the product of planning. Agents blocked escape routes and secured the area, reducing risks to both officers and the public. 8 individuals were taken into custody that morning, with Department of Homeland Security later confirming that 3 had criminal records ranging from drug offenses to grand theft. 1 had previously been ordered deported by a federal judge, but had ignored the ruling. This detail underscores why the raid mattered in law enforcement terms. Critics often argue that raids like these target innocent people, but the agency's priority remains individuals with records, repeat offenders, and fugitives. The fact that more than a third of those arrested had serious criminal charges supports ICE's emphasis on public safety. The remaining detainees were in violation of immigration law through unlawful presence or expired status. Immigration law is not symbolic. It carries legal consequences, and enforcement ensures those laws are upheld. ICE officials consistently remind the public that 70% of arrests nationwide involve individuals with criminal convictions, while another portion concerns national security risks. The Westlake raid also illustrated the administration's broader enforcement strategy. Just hours earlier, U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan publicly stated that raids would ramp up across the country. His message was pointed. Enforcement is not just about paperwork. It is about removing dangerous individuals from American neighborhoods. When raids like this are publicized, they serve both a practical and symbolic function. Practical because offenders are detained, and symbolic because communities see evidence that immigration law is being enforced consistently. Without such enforcement, officials argue, the integrity of U.S. borders and interior security would weaken. The reactions from the community reflected the country's divide. Some bystanders shouted warnings during the raid, while others expressed relief that enforcement was finally taking action against crime in their neighborhood. Westlake, like many urban districts, has struggled with property crimes, drug activity, and overcrowding. Residents often hesitate to speak publicly, but some quietly acknowledge feeling safer when known offenders are removed. Enforcement actions therefore carry both visible and invisible effects: fear in the immediate moment, but long-term reassurance that the law is being upheld. Critics argue that operations in public spaces create unnecessary fear for families, especially when children witness enforcement actions. Community advocates note that families scatter, businesses see disruption, and workers feel targeted. Yet law enforcement officials counter that. Without such actions, offenders would remain free to continue their activities. A parallel can be drawn with police activity in other areas. When officers serve arrest warrants at homes or workplaces, disruption is inevitable, but the alternative, leaving warrants unenforced, undermines the justice system. The same principle applies in immigration enforcement. Strategically, the raid at Westlake was not an isolated incident, but part of a sequence of actions. Earlier this year, ICE conducted what became known as the Trojan Horse Raid at the same location, using disguised entry methods to catch suspects off guard. Each operation is designed to adapt to new tactics used by offenders, some of whom may have ties to gangs or cartels. By varying their approach, sometimes using undercover vehicles, other times deploying overt tactical teams, ICE seeks to minimize risks of violence and maximize efficiency. This mirrors techniques used in other law enforcement fields, where unpredictability is critical to preventing organized resistance. The numbers further show the scale. According to DHS, ICE conducted thousands of arrests nationwide in August alone, with Los Angeles among the top areas of activity. Of those, a majority involved individuals with criminal histories. Each arrest represents a case file, immigration violations, prior deportation orders, and, in many cases, documented criminal conduct. When enforcement teams execute a raid, they are not starting from zero. The process begins with intelligence gathering, analysis of records, and coordination with local and federal partners. By the time an operation unfolds in public, the groundwork has already been laid. The Home Depot raid also connected directly to national policy. Immigration enforcement remains one of the most polarizing issues in American politics. Supporters view such raids as proof that the federal government is delivering on promises of stronger borders and safer communities. Opponents view them as unnecessary disruptions that target vulnerable populations. Yet the numbers continue to shape the debate. More than 27,000 deportations nationwide by July 2025, rising further through August, with Texas and California leading the states in volume. Those statistics demonstrate that enforcement is not sporadic, but systematic. Another layer involves cost. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated that each deportation averages around $12,000 when detention, transportation, and processing are factored in. Multiplied across tens of thousands of removals annually, the expense is significant. But proponents argue it is a necessary investment in national security and the rule of law. Without enforcement, the long-term costs of unchecked illegal immigration, strain on public services, increased crime, and pressure on job markets would far outweigh the immediate expenses of deportation operations. Supporters argue that the short-term cost is justified by the long-term benefits of safer neighborhoods and stronger border integrity. For ICE agents themselves, raids like Westlake are about operational safety as much as enforcement outcomes. By moving quickly, using coordinated tactics, and deploying tools like gas canisters, they reduce the risks of suspects fleeing into residential neighborhoods or engaging in violence. This approach, while criticized by some as overly aggressive, is intended to minimize harm for everyone present. The quicker the operation, the lower the chance of escalation. Law enforcement professionals stress that such raids are conducted under legal authority and with oversight, aligning with broader standards of justice. Looking ahead, the question is not whether enforcement will continue, but how it will expand. The administration has promised nationwide ramp-ups, and Los Angeles serves as one example of what communities may expect. More resources, more coordination, and more tactical planning are likely to characterize future raids. For individuals living unlawfully in the United States, the message is direct. Enforcement is active, consistent, and determined. For communities, the reminder is equally clear. Immigration law is not symbolic. It carries real consequences, and ICE remains the agency tasked with ensuring compliance. The Westlake Home Depot raid therefore stands as both a case study and a signal. It illustrates how modern immigration enforcement is conducted, swiftly, tactically, and with attention to public safety, and it signals that more such operations are on the way. Public debate will continue, as it has for decades, but the role of ICE remains central to the balance between community security and immigration law. At its core, this is not just about one raid at one Home Depot. It is about sovereignty, the rule of law, and the future direction of American immigration policy. Would you prefer to see immigration laws enforced decisively through operations like the Westlake raid, Or should enforcement take a different form while still maintaining security and order?